After 10 days on our own in northern Italy, it's time to relax, be waited on, and taken to exotic places. And what better way to do that than on a luxury ocean cruise with great friends? We boarded the Viking seas in Venice, and over the next 10 days, stopped in Koper, Slovenia, Zadar and Dubrovnik in Croatia, Kotor in Montenegro, and on to Greece with ports of call in Corfu, Katakolon, Santorini, and finally Athens. In each port, we went ashore for a land-based adventure that included sights and food and wine from the region. Here's just some of our adventures. Enjoy, and thanks for watching. Day one, like most days, starts with a breakfast served in the room and eaten on the veranda as we viewed the new city we find ourselves in, Koper, Slovenia. Now, the boat's a nice place to be, but to really experience this new place, you have to get out and explore. So, Gail and I chose from the list of places to see Prajama Castle and Postania Cave, both a short bus ride away. Prajama Castle, an impregnable medieval marvel perched in the middle of a 123-meter-high cliff for more than 800 years. It's the largest cave castle in the world. Behind the castle are secret tunnels, and where the knight Erasm of Prajama would set out on his plundering expeditions. Erasm, legend has it, had killed a royal court member in Vienna and fled to his castle to escape punishment. Between that and some other nasty things that he did, Erasm ended up having to defend his castle in a siege that lasted over a year. Hey, fun fact, although he was brave and nearly unbeatable, Erasm reportedly died while using this toilet after a betrayal by his servant. Time to get back on the bus and head to Postania Cave, just 9 kilometers away. Postania Cave is probably the best known cave in the world, a fantastic web of tunnels, passages, galleries, and halls. It offers miles of diversity as well as easy access with a train system built well over 100 years ago. It was once believed that a dragon lived in Postania Cave, and that the human fish, as these are called, are its offspring. These are the largest animals in the cave and measure only 25 to 30 centimeters in length, and they live for up to 100 years and are able to survive several years without food. Postania Cave is fascinating, but it's time to call it a day, get back to the boat, and set sail for our next adventure. The following morning, we woke up just as we were approaching Zadar, Croatia. And after our breakfast al fresco on the veranda, we were off to more adventure. And today's adventure we're sharing with our 2 travel buddies and our friends for many years, David Schwartz and Diane Lade, as we visit Krka National Park and its beautiful waterfalls along the Krka River. It really wasn't our favorite excursion of the trip, as the area was very crowded with tourists and it felt a bit like we were hustled through faster than we wanted to go. So we were happy to get back on the bus enjoy the beautiful countryside scenery as it passed by, and stop for a nice lunch, which of course included a nice local wine, which of course meant a nap on the bus ride back to Zadar. Back in Zadar, we listened to our guide Simon as he gave us a brief walking tour of this beautiful ancient city, showing us a few interesting sights, and he got us back on board just before time to set sail. Evenings on the ship are all about great dining, great wine, and great friends. Throw in a little entertainment in the ship's theater, and the next thing you know, it's time for bed and time to dream about the next day's adventures and what that holds in store. And this is what we woke up to, just as the ship was about to dock in Dubrovnik, Croatia. Before this cruise, I'm not sure I could even have told you where to find it on the map. And we certainly had no idea the beauty and the culture that this country holds. We wasted no time getting our things together for another fabulous day of immersing ourselves into the local scenery. And first off was a bus ride to a nearby village and a family farm with a working olive press over 200 years old. The family treated all of us to a delightful lunch on their back porch with views to die for and homemade cherry brandies in big glass jars steeping and aging to perfection. After lunch, it was time to visit a nearby winery. Thank goodness we had some food in us at this point, because before we started in on the wine, we needed to sample their brandies and grappa. Now, I've never heard of grappa, and I can tell you I have no idea what's in it, but it's delicious and has a bit of a kick. Time for wine. The winery was small, less than 10,000 bottles a year, but they definitely knew what they were doing with the brandy and grappa starter. We tasted a few whites and a few reds, finishing off with a Primitivo that we both instantly knew we had to have a bottle of to take back to the ship. Like I said, they knew what they were doing. Next stop on today's tour, the nearby town of Stone for a real treat. Stone is an old place, going back over 2,000 years when it was first a Roman settlement. The city is protected by walls to keep out invaders wanting the salt that Stone produced. But what we found was even more precious to us: oysters and mussels. We got on a boat at the dock in Stone, broke out more grappa, and made our way across the bay to the oyster beds. There, they pulled fresh oysters and mussels right out of the sea in front of us and prepared them as we listened to what their way of life is like.
We catch them in these curtains, we call them collectors. This one over here. So the baby oysters, they will attach themselves on these collectors over here, and we will leave them to grow for another 6 months in the sea.
We ate and slurped our fill on the freshest and most delicious oysters and mussels that you can imagine, along, of course, with some really nice wine, of which there doesn't seem to be any shortage of in these parts. So with our bellies full and big smiles on our faces, it was time to head back to the ship. But the day wasn't over yet. After a romantic dinner in one of the fine restaurants on board, our nightcap to this perfect day was to explore the old town of Dubrovnik after dark. And who do we run into? More travel buddies, Gary and Karen Gonzalez, who took these pictures of Old Town Dubrovnik. What a spectacular day. We got ourselves back to the ship and, exhausted but content, got ourselves to bed so we'll be rested for tomorrow. We awoke at dawn to see out of our stateroom window mountains closely passing by as the ship guided its way through the narrow fjords into Kotor, Montenegro. This tiny country, named for its black mountains rising from the sea, is stunning to see and rich in history and culture. The day ahead included a tour of this ancient city, but the highlight was a concert by local legends and the internationally recognized guitar duo of Darko Nicevic and Srđan Bulatovic. But before the concert, we did a walking tour of this old city. Kotor is nestled deep into the secluded part of the Bay of Kotor, and because of its location, it was perfectly situated to defend itself against invasion. And since maritime was so important to this city, the Maritime Museum is a must-stop on the Kotor tour, seeing the shipping artifacts going back to the Venetian era and beyond. It's time to get on the bus and take a short drive along the coast to the town of Perast, where the concert is being played. When we arrived at the church in Perast, there awaiting us were glasses of champagne. We had a few minutes to enjoy a glass and take a few obligatory tourist selfies before heading in. Nicevic and Bulatovic were a thrill to watch and listen to, partly because it was so unexpected. But everything about Montenegro was unexpected. All too soon, we had to get back aboard the Viking seas since the next port is calling. As the ship navigated back through the narrow passages and out of the Bay of Kotor, we all, I think, felt something special just happened. Corfu, Greece. We woke up to a beautiful sunny morning after sailing all night, docked in Corfu. I, for one, was very excited and had been looking forward to this day the whole trip. My shore excursion today is to mountain bike on the island and see it from my favorite perspective, that being from a bike. The views were beautiful and included both coastal as well as the inland hills on this island. The bikes we had were in good condition and well maintained, which made the ride all the more enjoyable. And the guides were fun and told us much about the island. It was a beautiful and wonderful way to spend the morning. My only regret was that Gail wasn't able to join me, but she was busy walking the town, doing a bit of shopping, and I'll meet up with her after lunch. We met up at the old fort and enjoyed some of the views above the town. But time was short as the ship was leaving soon, so we didn't stay long. Back on board, we have a late afternoon departure, which gives us plenty of time to relax and enjoy the time with friends. Together, we enjoyed the chef's table, where we're treated to the best dishes the chef has to offer. And they are good, especially with the select wines paired with the meal. Another terrific day in the books, and more fun than is probably good for you. Well, maybe more wine than is probably good for you. Someone hit the repeat button because we have more to come. Katakolon, Greece, a sleepy little seaside town on the Peloponnesian Peninsula. It's about a half-hour bus ride to Olympia, the site of the original Olympic Games. Incredible to think that these ruins go all the way back to the 8th century BC. We looked at the training areas, the stadium where the games took place, as well as the temples to Hera and Zeus. You can imagine just how impressive these buildings must have been, even with just one column standing today. Back on the ship, it's once again time to set sail to our next destination. We've gotten quite comfortable on the ship, having been sailing now for a week, and have found some of the best niches where we can gather to share wines and stories of our day's adventures. With its gleaming villages perched on black rock, Santorini is one of the most visually stunning islands in the Aegean. 1,300 feet straight up above our ship's anchorage is the town of Thera. There is no dock suitable for cruise ships in Thera, so we tendered in and met up with our bus ashore. The road switched back and forth up the cliffs and made it a rather exciting ride as we listened to our guide tell us about the area and the volcanic caldera that we found ourselves in.
When the volcanic cone collapsed, tidal waves left from here. Few minutes reached the top.
The short bus ride took us to the other side of the island to the picturesque town of Ia, with its whitewashed buildings and blue dome churches carved into the tops of the cliffs overlooking the caldera. We strolled around town and looked at the buildings and the shops, and then we're off to see more of this picturesque island. Our next stop was to the highest point on the island, Prophetus Ilias Mountain, and some pretty nice 360-degree views of Santorini. We then visited the nearby small town of Pyrgos, where Gail made friends with one of the locals. And since no shore excursion is complete without a winery stop, it's time to sample some of the best of Santorini before lunch. Lunch was at a nearby restaurant and not only included traditional meats, salad, and delicious tzatziki, and of course wine, but in addition to all that, traditional Greek dancing made for a delightful lunch. All too soon, it was time to get back to the dock, get aboard the ship, and head to our final stop on our Aegean cruise. After sailing all night, we awoke on our last full day in Athens, and we had a big day ahead of us exploring the archaeological site of Mycenae. Mycenae is a bit of a bus ride from Athens, but totally worth it. Along the way, we stopped at the canal that cuts through the Isthmus of Corinth, marveling at the engineering that it required back in 1893 to cut the 6-kilometer canal through solid rock. In the 2nd millennium BC, Mycenae was one of the major centers of Greek civilization and a military stronghold which dominated much of southern Greece. The ruins that we looked at date back from about 1600 BC to about 1100 BC. From its vantage point above the plains, you could see why the citadel was so effective and able to defend this whole region. Fascinating also to see the burial beehives in the region and to walk inside of them, marveling at the incredibly precise engineering required to build them. The museum at the Mycenae site was fascinating with its hundreds of artifacts from the period, and our guide was incredibly knowledgeable. It was like having a history professor with you all day, telling fascinating stories and interesting bits of information. It's time to once again board the bus and move on to our last stop, the ancient theater at the Asclepieion of Epidaurus. This ancient theater was built at the end of the 4th century BC, and it has amazing acoustics. Sitting anywhere in the theater, you can hear every sound made from the center of the stage. Another amazing adventure in the books. Time to head back to the ship. What a wonderful and remarkable 10 days it's been. Exploring a part of the world we'd never been to before and, quite frankly, knew very little about. And to experience it all from the vantage point of a luxury cruise and with great friends made it a way of traveling that we plan to repeat soon. Thanks for watching and happy travels.